Imagine this. You happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You took a left turn where you should have taken a right, and now you're being tried for murder and being threatened with the death penalty. What will you do? Do you have enough money to afford a lawyer to support you? Do you have family that you need to provide for? What will you do? The question is the death penalty a relic of a cruel past? And the answer is yes. And in my speech, I'll be talking about all the reasons why that is. The death penalty is a cruel punishment that shouldn't be entertained. According to an ethics guide by BBC published in 2014, they said that there is no way to justify taking revenge, not even when they're murderers, because of how we can't preach against murder when we practice murder ourselves. I am here to show that the death penalty is not a punishment that we should be inflicting on people, not only for the reason that murder is morally wrong. I will show that with these reasons. From a deterrent standpoint, injustice in the legal system, and cost efficiency. There is, of course, the moral point of view to consider when talking about the death penalty, but there's also logic to consider as well. The advocates for the death penalty talk about the death penalty being a deterrent against people committing murder. How much of that is true, though? And the truth is this: the death penalty is not effective at deterring crime. In an article called Why the Death Penalty Should Be Abolished by the International Commission Against the Death Penalty, article created in 2021, they spoke about how the United Nations admitted that they could find no conclusive evidence that there was a deterrent with the death penalty. And even with that, there are more pressing reasons that the death penalty should not be continued. Injustice. The next point to consider is that there's always going to be corruption with those that are in positions of power. How can we trust these people to choose who gets to live and who gets to die? In an article by Claire Andre and Manuel Velasquez called Capital Punishment, Our Duty or Our Doom, made in 2014, they speak that there were 19,000 people who committed willful homicide in the United States, and only 293 were sentenced to death. The people that were selected to die were almost always poor, and they were disproportionately black. The reason that they died was because they didn't have enough money to appeal their cases in the courts. These are all very important things to take into consideration, but there is a more practical and almost cold reason that the death penalty should not be in use, and that's money. You wouldn't anticipate this. The penalty isn't cheaper than putting people in prison for life. From ACLU and their article Case Against the Death Penalty, originally made in 1973, revised in 2012. Since the trials for cases that contain the death penalty take longer, they cost more and take more time away from people like lawyers and court reporters. The brunt of the costs for the trial are actually paid by taxes. An article again cites a study where it stated that the cost of a trial that included the death penalty would double the cost of a life in prison in New York. So no matter how you look at it, it's simply not cost effective to use the death penalty simply from an objective point of view. Throughout this speech, I have been laying out the reasons why the death penalty is not something that we can throw around lightly. The death penalty is not something that deters people from committing murders. There's rampant injustice in the system, and it is simply not cost effective no matter which angle you look at it with. The death penalty is something that is cruel and unusual, something that should have been left behind, and we should not be allowed to choose whether or not someone lives or dies like that. It makes us seem so hypocritical to punish murder with murder, no matter the circumstance. And it's not exactly something that you can just reverse with a snap.